Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? Adjman Sinadrop coming to you guys here today with another deck tech. So today we're going to be taking a look at a standard deck, and it is Boros Aggro. So with this Boros deck, it doesn't have any reoccurring theme. It's not tribal or anything like that, so it's not like Boros Humans, but this is one of the decks that I'm running for the beginning of the season of Gatecrash Standard. So we are going to break down this deck and take a look at how it works. Now, it functions a whole lot like Red Deck Wins that we saw in the previous seasons, and also like the Return to Ravnica season, because I was playing Red Deck Wins both in real-life Magic as well as Magic the Gathering online, and it did fairly well. So with all the cards that we have out now, Boros is definitely looking pretty good, so let's take a look at it. But before we get to that, if you guys have any suggestions for decks that you would like to see, please leave them down in the comments below. Alright, so the first thing that we are taking a look at is the Lan Base of the deck. So we want to see how our lands are going to work out for us, what mana we're having. So we have 22 lands, starting off with Sacred Foundries. So we have a playset of Sacred Foundry for red and white. We also have a playset of Clifftop Retreat for red and white as well. Then we have our mountains, so we're running 12 basic mountains. So there's another 4, and the final 4. So 12 basic mountains, and then we just have 2 basic plains. So originally the Lan Base started out for me of just having all sources of red, and then I had the dual lands, but I quickly found out that I needed just a little bit more white, and I needed to see a little bit more consistently, so I tried it with 1 plains, and it didn't really change much. Then I tried it with 2 plains, and it ended up working out fairly well. So overall, we have 10 sources of white for the deck, which is pretty on par with what we actually need. So now let's take a look at everything else. So we have a fair bit of creatures, so we're going to start off with those first in ascending order. So we have Stromkirk Noble, which is a 1/1 for 1 red. Really nice to play on turn 1. Can't be blocked by humans, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, we put a +1/+1 counter on him, which is always awesome. So, playset of Stromkirk. There are a fair bit of human builds floating around in the meta, so those decks are going to have like a little bit of trouble with Stromkirk. They can obviously deal with them earlier on with removal, but if they're not able to do that, Stromkirk is pretty awesome just because he gets really big really quick and they can't block him. So I like him for that, but ultimately he's a really early play and can become fairly huge fairly quick. From there we have Rakdos Cackler, so it's a 1/1 for 1 red for us essentially, with Unleash. So if we have him come in with a +1/+1 counter, he can't block. So there's a downside to that where if you win game 1 in a aggro mirror and then you're on the draw, you're kind of forced to play the deck a little bit more defensively than you would anything else. So sometimes you will have to have the Rakdos Cackler come in leashed, I guess you would say, as opposed to unleashed. So you would have him as a 1/1 instead of the 2/2. Sometimes he's required to block, but more times than none, he's going to be a 2/2 for the 1 and just have him just bash face. Then we have Ash Zealot, which is a 2/2 for double red for us here. It has first strike, and whenever a player is casting a spell from a graveyard, she's going to deal 3 damage to that player, which is pretty nice up against any decks that are running flashback spells or anything like that. So the 3 English Zealots, the playset of Zealots is pretty nice to have. It deals with other early aggro decks because it has first strike, and it's gonna kind of force them to not be able to really swing in with everything, just because the first strike may hit into a lot of their things. So I like it for that, but ultimately it has haste and swings in on turn 2. Then we have Lightning Mauler, so it's a 2/1 for 2 with Soul Bond, and the paired creatures are going to have haste. So it's going to give haste to creatures that normally wouldn't have haste, which is not bad at all. So creatures that I like to give haste to would be like the Pyreheart Wolf. If we can go turn 2 Lightning Mauler, turn 3 Pyreheart Wolf, and then like swing team, chances are our opponent's not going to be able to block it, because whenever it attacks, each creature you control can't be blocked this turn except by 2 or more creatures, and it has Undying as well. So being a 1/1 for 3 is kind of subpar for the power and toughness equal that is compared to its converted mana cost, but having Undying and having that strong of an ability is really good for this type of an aggro deck. So we're running 3 Pyreheart Wolf to make our things a little bit harder to block. So 3 Pyreheart Wolves, and then we have Boros Reckoner. So I actually have a few proxies in here of cards that I just didn't pull from Gatecrash with all the boxes that I opened, so I'm borrowing them from friends as far as my tournament play goes, but I'm just still waiting for them to come in the mail to permanently have them. But play set of Boros Reckoner for the deck. He's a 3/3 for triple hybrid Boros mana, red or white. So whenever he's dealt damage, he deals that much damage to target creature or player. So you can redirect that to either get rid of another creature, or you can redirect it at your opponent to deal even more damage to them. But for one red or white, he gets first strike until the end of the turn, which is also fairly relevant up against other aggro-based decks. And it kind of assures him that he's going to be able to swing in and in most cases be unanswered, because your opponent's not going to want to waste a creature that they could be swinging in with or blocking something else with. So we have a playset of Boros Reckoner. He's a really powerful card in Limited, and even in Constructed, he's just a powerhouse. From there, we have Hellrider. So Hellrider is our first 4-drop of the deck. He has haste, is a 3/3 for 4, and whenever a creature you control attacks, he deals 1 damage to defending player. Now that damage can be redirected to planeswalkers because it is damage and it's not life loss. But if you have a ton of creatures, Hellrider ends up being better and better for us. So playset a Hellrider, he can outright win games, even if your opponent's at a small amount of life and you can't really deal damage based on your creatures swinging in and dealing damage. The Hellrider's ability oftentimes will just be able to match whatever you need and just win you the game. So from there, I have some Spark Troopers here. So I'm running 3 Spark Troopers, and then I have my 1 proxy for the 3rd one. But Spark Trooper is another card that I thought was really interesting when Gatecrash came out, and I wanted to play with him, and he actually ends up being really good. He's a 6/1 for 4 with Trample, Lifelink, and Haste, and at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice him. So I'm running him as a 3-of in the build, and he works out pretty well up against anything that doesn't have first strike or double strike. So up against aggro decks that have the means of giving creatures first strike or double strike, or have first strike and double strike just as a basis of the creature, you want to side him out. He's not going to be good for you just because he's not going to be able to swing in effectively and deal damage. But if you're playing up against anything that doesn't have the means of giving first strike or just getting rid of him before he can actually deal damage himself, he's really good because he gains you back life, and up against aggro builds that don't or can't get first strike and double strike, they're going to be either forced to chump a creature to be able to not take as much damage, or you just deal 6 damage to them and you gain back 6 life, which sets a difference of 12 life between you and your opponent, or like gets you closer to winning the game or out of the realms of losing the game or something like that. But Spark Trooper has been really good in this deck, but anytime you're running up against things with first strike, double strike, definitely side him out. From there, we have Thundermaw Hellkite. So Thundermaw Hellkite is another haste creature. He's a 5/5 for 5 with flying and haste, and whenever he enters the battlefield, he deals 1 damage to each creature opponents control with flying, and we get to tap down those creatures. So it's going to kind of assure himself of a swing in and being able to deal 5 damage the turn he comes out there. So I love Thundermaw Hellkite in this deck. He works really well. He's a good red deck wins type of card, and just transitioning him from the last season to this season and adding in the white cards was pretty perfect. So then we have our non-creature spells. So first off, we have Searing Spear. So this is going to be a playset for us. So deals 3 damage to target creature or player for 2 mana. It's pretty standard as far as red decks go. You can either use it to get rid of creatures when playing up against other aggro decks, or you can just redirect it, use it at your opponent, and just deal damage to them directly. So Searing Spear is definitely really nice for that. And then we have 2 Boros Charms. So with Boros Charm, I love using this. I have 2 in the main board, 2 in the sideboard. And it deals 4 damage to target player or permanents we control are indestructible, or target creature gains double strike. So a interaction that I like is Boros Charm giving double strike to Stromkirk Noble, because with Stromkirk Noble, he's going to deal damage in first strike, and he gets a counter, and then in normal combat damage, he's going to swing in with that counter on him, whatever it was. If he was already big, then just plus 1 more damage from the last swing, and he's going to swing in for just a little bit more. So I like the Boros Charm for that, being able to give Stromkirk double strike. If he's already somewhat big, it makes him like even more powerful, but that's just one of the interactions that you have in the deck to get him big really quick, or have him deal even more damage if you're playing like up against humans or anything like that. But being able to give indestructible your creatures, I think, is the most powerful thing about Boros Charm, just because up against control, whenever they're playing turn 4 Supreme Verdict, if you're able to respond with Boros Charm and give all of your things indestructible, they are pretty much out of luck, because there's not really much else that they can do unless you're not able to resolve the win with all of your creatures swinging in on the following turn, which in most cases you should be able to with this deck. But Boros Charm is the best way to deal with control, being able to wrath you with Supreme Verdict. With Terminus, they really have the upper hand there, but with Supreme Verdict, it's going to be the more consistent thing to have and play, just because with Terminus, they have to bank off of the Miracle being drawn off, and with Terminus, it's more consistent. It's a turn 4 Wrath that they can play, and Boros Charm deals with it, so it's definitely nice to have, and up against control, we side in 2 more. And then we have Aralia Spheria, or Aralia Spheria, however you guys want to pronounce it, because it really doesn't matter. It's an instant speed spell for X and 1 red and 1 white, so it deals X amount of damage divided as you choose among any number of players or creatures, and each creature that's dealt damage that way is going to be tapped. Each player that's dealt damage that way can't cast non-creature spells for the turn. So at the beginning of our opponent's upkeep, if we're playing up against control, we can cast Aralia Spheria, even if it's just for 1, and we can target them and have them not be able to play non-creature spells, so that's going to assure us that they can't wrath us with even drawing into Terminus or playing Terminus or Supreme Verdict, anything like that. They can't cast wraths, so they're forced to only be able to play creatures if they even have any. So up against control, it's nice during the beginning of their upkeep, but up against other aggro-based decks, we can cast the Fury and target their creatures, like dealing at least 1 damage to their creatures, and be able to tap down all of them, which is pretty nice. It can assure us to have another alpha attack, either on our turn or do it during their turn, and then the following turn we can swing in. So it's not bad. It's not bad at all. I love the Fury as a 2-of in the deck, and it definitely really does work out for us. So that's the main board. Now let's take a look at the sideboard here. So for our sideboard, like I mentioned before, we have the Boros Charms. So we have 2 more Boros Charms for this side where we can give our creatures indestructible. And I like siding it in more so against control than anything else. That's where I find the biggest use out of it. So I like having the 2 in the side for that. Also, decks that have a lot of spot removal or anything like that, I like to have the Boros Charm, because if they're banking off of using spells that say destroy or deal damage and like kill the creature, Boros Charm is going to be nice for that as well. From there, we have Skullcrack, which should be in almost any deck, aggro-based deck that is trying to outrace our opponents. In the sideboard, it's really strong just because Skullcrack is going to prevent our opponents from being able to gain life. So I run it as a playset in the sideboard whenever Searing Spear is subpar. And it's the exact same mana cost. It's an instant speed for 1 generic and 1 red. They can't gain life, damage can't be prevented, and it deals 3 damage to target player, which is pretty solid overall. So being able to react to Sphinx's Revelation or Thragtusk coming into play is definitely a nice way to play off of it. So our opponent can't gain life, and they get no advantage from playing cards like that. So play set a Skullcrack for us. Usually it's whenever Searing Spear is not really doing much for us is when I'm going to be siding it in. So play set a Skullcrack. We also have Pillar of Flame. So Pillar of Flame is a 3-of. It's a 1 red, deals 2 damage to target creature or player. If a creature dealt damage this way would die during the turn, exile it instead. So Pillar of Flame is nice because it's a nice means of dealing with other aggro decks like the Mirror Match, where they have a lot of small things where we can just use Pillar of Flame and get rid of them. So Pillar of Flame is a nice means for that. Then we have Rest in Peace. So with Rest in Peace, Reanimator-based decks are really annoying, and they end up being troublesome. If you win game 1, game 2, they go into being able to be on the play. They get their land drop earlier than you, and sometimes they can even just get their big fatties out there before you're able to actually bash in and beat them. So Rest in Peace is a nice means to be able to deal with Reanimator-based decks and not let them play off of their graveyard synergies. Whenever it enters the battlefield, it exiles all cards from graves, and any cards that would be hitting into graveyards are going to be exiled instead. So Creates that instead ability, and Rest in Peace overall is just really strong. So 3 of for Rest in Peace. I also have 2 Volcanic Strength in the sideboard because up against any deck that's running mountains, even Shocklands, that's one thing that you guys want to pay attention to, especially stuff like Stomping Grounds. Those are still considered mountains. The enchanted creature is going to have Mountain Walk, so it gets +2/+2 for 2 mana and Mountain Walk, which is going to make it unblockable but against anybody that's running mountains. So it's really strong, but the one thing that you want to pay attention for is if your opponent has mana out, it's perfectly possible for them at instant speed to get a 2-for-1 on you by casting something like Searing Spear or another removal element, where they can just get rid of your creature before you even get the buff in the case of dealing damage to it. But at the same time, like if it's just a generic kill spell, then they just get that 2-for-1 without any problem. So it's one thing to pay attention to with 2-for-1 advantages that your opponent could get over you with it, but if you're able to resolve it and swing with a creature unblocked, it's really tremendous. And this is a card that should be in sideboards for red decks if they run into any deck that's running mountains. And then we have 1 Zealous Conscripts. Zealous Conscripts is a 3/3 for 5 with haste, and whenever it enters the battlefield, we gain control of target permanent until the end of the turn. Untap that permanent and it gains haste until the end of the turn. So Zealous Conscripts is our means of being able to take big things that our opponents may have, even if they played like Thragtusk and they weren't able to gain life off of it because we played our Skullcrack. Still being able to play Zealous Conscripts, take anything of theirs, and use it against them is really strong. So 1 Zealous Conscripts to take all the things. So that is Boros Aggro for you guys here today. So if you guys enjoyed this deck, please be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content. The entire deck list is down below where you guys can check it out, as well as a playlist to all the previous decks that I've covered on the channel, so be sure to check that out as well. And until next time, guys, have yourselves a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.